stop being nice. Let me ask you something. How many times have you bitten your tongue just to keep the peace? How often have you agreed to something you didn't want just so no one would think you were difficult? And after all that, what did it get you? More respect? More opportunities? Or just more expectations that you'll keep bending over backward for everyone else? It's time to stop being nice. Now, don't get me wrong. This isn't about being rude, aggressive, or uncaring. It's about understanding that niceness is not the same as kindness. Niceness is surface level. It's driven by a need to be liked. Kindness, on the other hand, is deeper. It's about honesty. It's about standing your ground, even when it's uncomfortable. Nice people get overlooked. Kind people get respected. Think about it. The ones who always say yes to extra work without complaint, they get dumped on. The ones who constantly go out of their way for others without ever standing up for themselves, they get taken for granted. Why? Because niceness is passive. It tells the world, I'll do whatever you need, no matter how it affects me. But kindness has strength. It says, I care, but I won't compromise who I am to make you comfortable. The people-pleasing trap, people-pleasing feels good in the moment because it avoids conflict, but over time it does something dangerous. It teaches people that your needs don't matter, and the more you make their lives easier, the less they notice what it's costing you. It's not selfish to put yourself first. It's not mean to say no. It's necessary. Because every time you prioritize everyone else's happiness over your own well-being, you chip away at your confidence, your energy, and your sense of self-worth. The cost of being too agreeable. Think about the most successful, respected people you know. Are they pushovers? No. They have clear boundaries. They are kind but firm. They don't just nod along to avoid conflict. They speak up, even when it's uncomfortable. That's the difference. Nice is easy. Kind is courageous. How to shift from being nice to being respected. So how do you make the shift? How do you stop being the person who gets walked over and start being the one who commands respect? Stop apologizing for having an opinion. Your voice matters. If you disagree, say so. Learn to say no without guilt. You don't owe everyone your time and energy. Prioritize respect over being liked. Not everyone will like you when you set boundaries, but the right people will respect you for it. Speak with confidence. If you're always hedging, I might be wrong, but you're giving people permission to ignore you. Own your words. Protect your energy. Not everyone deserves unlimited access to you. This isn't about being harsh, it's about being real. Because at the end of the day, the world doesn't need more nice people. It needs more people who are real, strong, and unafraid to stand in their truth. Being nice and being kind might look the same on the surface, but they come from completely different places. Niceness is about avoiding conflict, about making sure everyone around you is comfortable, even at the expense of your own needs, values, and boundaries. It's about seeking approval, about making sure people see you as agreeable, likable, and easy to be around. But the problem with niceness is that it often comes at a cost. When you're too nice, you hesitate to speak up when something bothers you. You say yes when you really mean no. You suppress your opinions to keep the peace, to avoid rocking the boat, to make sure no one feels uncomfortable, even if that means making yourself uncomfortable. And in doing so, you slowly erode your own self-respect, because every time you put someone else's comfort ahead of your own well-being, you send a message to yourself that your needs don't matter as much as theirs, that your voice isn't as important, that your feelings should always take a back seat to the feelings of others. Kindness, on the other hand, is different. Kindness isn't about seeking approval. It's about doing the right thing, even when it's hard, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it means having difficult conversations or making choices that others might not like. Kindness is rooted in strength, not weakness. It's about standing up for yourself and others, not because you want people to like you, but because it's the right thing to do. It's about setting boundaries, not because you don't care, but because you do. Because you understand that true respect, both for yourself and from others, comes from honesty, from integrity, from having the courage to be real. Unlike niceness, which is often a mask, kindness requires authenticity. It requires the ability to be honest, even when honesty is uncomfortable. It requires the ability to say no, even when saying yes would be easier. It requires the ability to hold firm to your values, even when doing so means disappointing people. And that's why kindness is powerful while niceness is weak. Niceness is passive. It goes with the flow, avoids conflict, and seeks approval at all costs. Kindness, on the other hand, is active. It makes decisions based on principles, not pressure. It values honesty over comfort, respect over popularity, and truth over convenience. The difference between being nice and being kind is the difference between being liked and being respected, between being agreeable and being authentic, between blending in and standing out, between seeking external validation and having internal confidence. Those who are merely nice often find themselves exhausted, drained, and overlooked because they've spent so much energy trying to please others that they've forgotten to honor themselves. Whereas those who are kind, truly kind, earn the respect of those around them because they are willing to do what is right rather than what is easy, because they understand that real strength isn't in being accommodating to everyone at all times, but in knowing when to take a stand, when to speak up, and when to prioritize their own well-being without apology. Nice people often believe that by being agreeable, accommodating, and always putting others first, they will earn appreciation, recognition, and respect. They assume that if they are pleasant, if they avoid confrontation, if they say yes to every request, people will see their efforts, acknowledge their kindness, and treat them with the same level of consideration and care. But what actually happens is the opposite. Instead of being appreciated, nice people are often overlooked. Instead of being recognized for their willingness to help, they are taken for granted. Instead of being respected, they become the go-to person for extra work, unreasonable favors, and unreciprocated efforts. Because the hard truth is that when you teach people that you are always available, that you never push back, that you never say no, they start expecting it. And once something is expected, it stops being appreciated. The more you give without setting limits, the less people value what you offer, because what comes too easily is rarely respected. Kind people, on the other hand, don't just give endlessly without regard for their own needs and priorities. They understand the importance of balance, of knowing when to help and when to draw the line, of recognizing that real generosity is not about sacrificing themselves for others, but about giving from a place of strength rather than obligation. And that strength comes from setting boundaries. Boundaries change how people treat you because they communicate self-respect. They send a message that while you may be willing to help, you are not willing to be used. They establish that your time, energy, and effort have value, and that if people want access to those things, they need to respect you in return. When you have clear boundaries, people think twice before taking advantage of you. They become more mindful of their requests. They learn that your kindness is not an open invitation to endless demands, but something that must be met with appreciation and consideration. And this is where the difference between nice and kind becomes most apparent. Nice people struggle to say no because they fear disappointing others. But kind people recognize that saying no is sometimes the kindest thing they can do, both for themselves and for those around them. When you say yes to everything, you spread yourself too thin, you overcommit, you exhaust yourself to the point where you have nothing left to give. And when you reach that point, the quality of your relationships, your work, and your well-being all suffer. But when you set boundaries, when you're intentional about where you direct your time and energy, when you choose to give only in ways that are healthy and sustainable, you show up as your best self, and that benefits everyone. People begin to see you as someone who values themselves, someone who is strong, someone who is confident enough to prioritize what truly matters instead of trying to please everyone at the expense of their own well-being. Respect is not given to those who make themselves small to accommodate others. It is given to those who stand firm, who make it clear that their kindness is not a weakness but a choice, that they will help when they can but not at the cost of their own dignity, that they will be generous but not at the expense of their own peace. And when you embody that mindset, when you stop being just nice and start being truly kind, with boundaries, with confidence, with self-respect, you will notice a shift. The people who only valued you for what you could do for them may drift away, but the people who truly respect you will remain. You will be surrounded by those who appreciate you for who you are, not just for what you can give, because kindness earns respect. But niceness without boundaries only invites disregard. People-pleasing seems harmless at first. It feels like the right thing to do, making sure everyone is happy, avoiding conflict, being the person others can always rely on. It's ingrained in many of us from a young age. The idea that being liked, being agreeable, being someone who always says yes will lead to stronger relationships, to more opportunities, to a life filled with approval and acceptance. But what we don't realize is that people-pleasing is not an act of kindness. It is a slow erosion of self-respect. The moment you begin to prioritize others' comfort over your own values, you start losing a part of yourself. You start making decisions not based on what you truly believe, but on what will keep the peace, on what will make others like you, on what will prevent discomfort in the short term. And while it may feel like you are doing the right thing, the cost is far greater than you think. Every time you say yes when you want to say no, every time you suppress your real thoughts to avoid upsetting someone, every time you adjust your behavior to fit the expectations of others, you reinforce the idea that your feelings, your needs, and your values are less important than keeping people happy. And the more you do this, the harder it becomes to break the cycle. You begin to feel trapped because the moment you try to assert yourself, the people who have grown accustomed to your constant compliance push back. They don't like the shift. They resist the idea that you might start putting your own needs first. And suddenly you are faced with a choice. Do you continue to shrink yourself, to say what people want to hear, to mold yourself into the version of you that pleases others? Or do you take the risk of being misunderstood, of being seen as difficult, of potentially losing relationships that were built on your willingness to always bend? The dangers of people-pleasing go beyond just feeling drained or overwhelmed. It affects how people perceive you. When you constantly put others before yourself, they stop seeing you as someone who has strong convictions, as someone who stands firm in their beliefs. Instead, they see you as someone who can be swayed, someone who can be relied upon to always adjust, someone who will never challenge, never resist, never disrupt the status quo. And while this might make you likable, it does not make you respected. Because respect is not given to those who constantly conform. It is given to those who are willing to stand for something even when it is unpopular. But perhaps the greatest danger of people-pleasing is that over time, you lose sight of who you really are. When you spend so much time catering to the needs and expectations of others, when you define your worth by how much you can accommodate, when you prioritize external validation over internal truth, you begin to disconnect from your own desires, your own beliefs, your own sense of self. You may wake up one day and realize that you don't even know what you truly want anymore because you have spent so long focusing on what others expect from you. And that is the real trap. Not just that people-pleasing drains you, not just that it prevents you from being respected, but that it slowly strips away your identity, leaving you feeling empty, lost, and uncertain about who you are outside of the roles you have played to keep others happy. The way out of this trap is not easy, but it is necessary. It requires breaking the habit of seeking constant approval, learning to tolerate the discomfort of disappointing people, and recognizing that your worth is not determined by how much you can sacrifice for others. It requires reclaiming your voice, standing firm in your values, and accepting that not everyone will like you, and that's okay. Because the people who truly matter, the ones who genuinely respect and care for you, will never require you to betray yourself just to make them comfortable. And once you understand that, once you realize that real relationships are built on authenticity and not just on pleasing others, you will finally begin to step into your own power, to live on your own terms, and to break free from the exhausting cycle of trying to be everything for everyone, but nothing for yourself. As being agreeable seems like a good trait. After all, who doesn't want to be seen as cooperative, easygoing, and pleasant to be around? Saying yes often makes you feel useful, appreciated, and included. In the workplace, it can create the illusion of being a team player. In relationships, it can make you appear caring and supportive. But there is a hidden cost to always being agreeable, one that many don't realize until it's too late. When you constantly say yes, when you avoid conflict at all costs, when you prioritize keeping the peace over standing your ground, you begin to trade away your own ambitions, needs, and values for the comfort of others. You start to blend in rather than stand out. You become the person who is relied upon but never truly respected, the one who is present but rarely valued as a leader, the one who is liked but not necessarily admired. And while it may feel like being agreeable is a strength, in reality, it can become one of your greatest weaknesses if not managed with awareness. In your career, being too agreeable can prevent you from reaching your full potential. When you say yes to every request, you stretch yourself too thin, taking on more work than you should, often without receiving the recognition or rewards that should come with it. You become the person who is always willing to help, but never the one who sets the direction. Leaders don't emerge from those who constantly accommodate. They emerge from those who take initiative, who push back when necessary, who have the courage to challenge ideas and advocate for themselves. If you are always agreeable, you might be seen as dependable, but not as someone who has strong convictions, not as someone who drives change, not as someone who commands influence. You may find yourself being passed over for promotions because while you are reliable, you are not seen as decisive. While you are hardworking, you are not seen as strategic. While you are cooperative, you are not seen as a leader. And over time, this can lead to frustration, resentment, and a feeling of stagnation because you realize that being agreeable has not moved you forward. It has only made you more convenient for others. In relationships, the cost of being too agreeable is just as high. When you never express your true thoughts, when you go along with decisions just to avoid friction, when you say yes even when you feel no, you start to lose yourself. You may think you are keeping the relationship strong by avoiding conflict, but in reality, you are creating an imbalance where your needs take a back seat. Over time, this can lead to feeling unheard, unappreciated, and disconnected from your own identity. Healthy relationships require honesty, not just harmony. They require the ability to express disagreement, to set boundaries, to stand firm in your values. But when you are too agreeable, you end up prioritizing the other person's comfort over your own truth. And that is not the foundation of a fulfilling connection. It is the foundation of resentment and emotional exhaustion. Being too agreeable also affects how people treat you. When you always say yes, people start to expect it. They assume you will adjust, that you will compromise, that you will make sacrifices without question. And once people get used to that, they stop appreciating it. What was once seen as generosity becomes expected. What was once seen as helpfulness becomes the bare minimum. And when the time comes that you finally try to set boundaries, that you finally say no, people may react with shock, frustration, or even disappointment, not because you are doing something wrong, but because you have trained them to believe that your time, energy, and efforts are always available. This is the trap of excessive agreeableness. The more you give without limits, the more people take without gratitude. Breaking free from this cycle does not mean becoming difficult or uncooperative. It means learning to be selectively agreeable, to know when to say yes and when to say no. It means recognizing that standing your ground does not make you selfish, that expressing your true thoughts does not make you unkind, and that advocating for your own needs is not a betrayal of others, it is a commitment to yourself. It means understanding that real respect is not given to those who always comply, but to those who have the courage to be honest, even when honesty is uncomfortable. And when you begin to embrace this, when you start valuing your own voice as much as you value keeping the peace, you will notice a shift. You will find that the right people, the ones who truly respect and appreciate you, will not leave because you have boundaries. They will stay because they admire your strength, your clarity, and your authenticity. And in both your career and your relationships, this is what ultimately sets you apart. Not your willingness to always agree, but your ability to stand firm when it truly matters. Respect is not given to those who constantly seek to please. It is not earned by those who avoid conflict, who silence their own voices to maintain harmony, or who follow the crowd without question. Respect comes from authenticity, from having the courage to stand firm in your beliefs, to speak your truth, to make decisions based on principles rather than pressure. The most successful people, the most influential leaders, the individuals who command attention and admiration, are not the ones who try to be everything to everyone. They are the ones who embrace who they truly are, who refuse to compromise their values for the sake of approval, who are direct in their communication rather than passive in their approach. And this distinction between authenticity and compliance, between directness and passivity, is what separates those who lead from those who thrive from those who remain stuck, those who are truly respected from those who are merely tolerated. In leadership, authenticity is everything. People do not follow leaders who say what they think others want to hear. They follow those who have a clear vision, who communicate with confidence, who are unafraid to challenge the status quo. Great leaders do not sugarcoat the truth to make it more palatable. They do not hide behind vague words or avoid difficult conversations out of fear of discomfort. They are direct, not to be harsh, but because they understand that clarity is necessary for growth, for progress, for trust. When a leader is passive, when they hesitate to make decisions, when they prioritize keeping everyone happy over doing what is right, they lose credibility. Their team loses confidence in them. Their words carry less weight. And instead of being respected, they become someone who is merely present rather than someone who is truly influential. This same principle applies to success in any field. The most accomplished individuals are not those who simply follow instructions and blend in. They're the ones who think independently, who challenge assumptions, who are willing to take risks and stand by their ideas. They do not let fear of judgment dictate their actions. They do not avoid expressing themselves because they are afraid of ruffling feathers. Instead, they embrace the discomfort that comes with being honest, knowing that true success requires the courage to be real rather than the convenience of being agreeable. They understand that passivity may keep things smooth in the short term, but in the long term it leads to stagnation, missed opportunities, and a lack of true fulfillment. In relationships, both personal and professional, authenticity is what builds trust. People can sense when someone is being genuine versus when they are simply saying what they think others want to hear. Compliance might make you seem easy to get along with, but it does not create deep connections. People respect those who are real, those who are willing to set boundaries, those who communicate their needs without hesitation. When you are passive, when you avoid conflict at all costs, when you constantly adjust yourself to fit into what others expect, you may avoid friction, but you also lose the ability to build meaningful, respected relationships. Because real respect does not come from always agreeing. It comes from having the strength to be honest, even when honesty is uncomfortable. One of the biggest mistakes people make is assuming that being direct is the same as being rude. They believe that if they speak their mind, they will be disliked. But the truth is, the most respected people are not the ones who never offend anyone. They are the ones who are clear, decisive, and unwavering in their principles. Being direct does not mean being unkind. It means valuing truth over temporary comfort. It means respecting yourself enough to communicate with clarity rather than resorting to passive compliance. It means recognizing that true influence does not come from pleasing everyone. It comes from standing firm, from knowing your worth, from understanding that the only way to build lasting success and meaningful relationships is to show up as your real self rather than a watered-down version created to fit into others' expectations. And when you embrace this, when you stop chasing approval and start prioritizing authenticity, everything changes. You attract the right opportunities because people trust you. You build stronger relationships because people respect you. You develop a sense of confidence that is unshakable because you are no longer living in fear of how others perceive you. You step into leadership not because you are trying to, but because authenticity naturally commands respect. And that is the ultimate truth. Leaders, successful individuals, and truly respected people are not those who follow passively, but those who lead boldly. Not those who comply to fit in, but those who have the courage to be themselves fully and unapologetically. Stop being nice. Stop seeking approval at the cost of your authenticity. Being agreeable won't earn you respect. Being real True leadership, success, and fulfillment come from standing firm in your values, speaking with clarity, and setting boundaries. Say no when necessary, challenge when it matters, and refuse to shrink yourself for others' comfort. People-pleasing is a trap, and excessive agreeableness holds you back. Respect comes from honesty, not compliance. Influence comes from authenticity, not passivity. The moment you choose to be direct instead of agreeable, to be kind instead of just nice, is the moment you reclaim your power.